I'm going to start a timer, and on the count of 3, I'm going to have you close your eyes and try to fly straight and level for as long as you can, okay? You ready?
Yep.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, down this way.
Okay.
Versus in the figure 8 turn, it's blind.
Right.
And we can't see it, so it does us no good. Now this way, you can give yourself more space, you can stay higher, and you can look all along here and see, okay, what are we dealing with on the approach? Now, what do you think's the best way to get back down in there from base to final? Do you think you're going to go to the right or go to the left? All right, another nice, wet and rainy day in the coastal mountains of British Columbia. Scott, you've become accustomed to this type of weather.
This is the new ISA standard that I'm going to follow.
So, Scott, you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody where you're from and how you got into helicopters?
Yeah, so my name's Scott. I'm from Ontario. Flying was a passion of mine when I was a kid, and unfortunately I didn't take advantage of it then. Went into a career of some law enforcement and some different adventures, and then when I felt the time it was to change, on my way to sign up for some fixed wing courses, I passed the helicopter school, and I did an intro flight, and I got hooked. And then I chose to come out and train in beautiful British Columbia with all the mountains and the different views and such. Just get quite the experience out here. And I'm fortunate enough to have a very experienced flight instructor, Sam, with many hours, and it's been awesome so far.
Sev did the same thing to me with the instructor comments. So yeah, Scott's about 60 hours now. So we're just starting to get into some more advanced flying and get ready for flight tests, which is coming up really soon. Just passed your written, which was a huge step. Ground school's all done.
Yep.
And so now we're starting to get into the kind of the fun stuff where things really start to come together, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, for sure. Now it's the pressure off one thing, and then there's the new pressure of a flight test now.
Yeah, so that's one thing with flight training that is really difficult for a lot of people. It definitely was very difficult in my training. Essentially, as soon as you finish one thing, there's another thing, another thing, another thing, another thing. You never can fully relax and just kind of enjoy it as much as you would hope.
For sure.
Because there's always more to learn. And even myself, I find myself every single day learning new things, kind of realizing different techniques or different situations that I hadn't quite understood fully before. Or something from years back clicks and I'm like, oh, that's what that was, or something like that. So every day you're learning, and it's truly a license to learn, because when you come out of this course, you just barely know enough to to take off and land, and you definitely start to feel somewhat, more aware of how much you don't know.
Absolutely.
And that's when things get a little bit freaky, because you start to realize, wow, I really don't know that much.
Every day I still look at myself and I'm like, I can't believe I'm flying a helicopter by myself in areas that I've never been to before, and here we are. And
yeah, and some pretty advanced terrain. We got some pretty tall mountains and some really nasty weather occasionally. So we just had some really nasty weather last week, a lot of flooding and mudslides, and just complete devastation in British Columbia, which has been really sad to see. But we had a massive response to that crisis with so many helicopters, and it was so amazing to see so many people from the local community, local companies from all over British Columbia jump in and start helping everyone who became in need of assistance. So that was awesome to see. We've seen more helicopters in the air over the lower mainland of British Columbia than I've ever seen in my life.
It was amazing. Watching a flight school turn into a rescue
yeah,
organization overnight was awesome.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a rescue operation. We were just moving people from point A to point B that couldn't go by any other means.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
It was definitely different than your typical charter. But yeah, we didn't do any intense rescues like the other machines and companies were doing in the local area. So we're just heading down the west shoreline of Stave Lake, southbound. We just finished up flying here, and we're getting ready to head back in the control zone. So we just thought we'd take some time to introduce Scott and take you guys along for the rest of our flight here. So let's make a radio call and switch over
Yeah.
to 2277.
1267 traffic, helicopter R44, Alpha Yankee, Quebec, just south of the powerhouse, heading southbound at 1,400, switching to 12277.
So of all the things that you've learned so far with helicopters, what would you say is the most surprising thing to you? What has been the most shocking or the most surprising element of learning to fly?
I think it's just with the experience with a little bit of fixed wing, it's the constant need to be on the controls and a lot more diligent on your controls and stuff. Whereas in my experience with fixed wings, it's a lot more laid back, a little more loose. And in the helicopter, there's really not too many times where you can have your hands off, any of your controls. And just the sensitivity of everything and how quickly things can change, how fast you have to be ready to adapt to the weather, especially out here, and it's always changing. So just being adaptive and able to handle those situations and stuff, and knowing how the machine operates. So just knowing, where it's consistent and what parts of the machine are going to do what, definitely makes it a lot easier, but definitely adapting to such a new machine that has so many different variables, it was a big surprise to me.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely accurate for sure. It's things can go wrong really quickly, and as a result, you have to be ready to react to those situations quickly. Definitely makes it a lot less relaxed than most other, if we're speaking of flying planes.
Yep.
Awesome, you're right on the numbers. That's perfect, nice job. So Scott and I are just practicing a little bit of instrument flying now. Getting a little turbulent, which is pretty accurate when you're actually in cloud because clouds are turbulent. So it's good to practice this in all conditions, even when it feels almost impossible. Now, I'm going to take control from you, Scott. So I have control.
You have control.
And you can take the glasses off.
Yep.
And I'm going to give you control here again. And then we're going to turn southbound towards Hatzick Lake.
Okay,
so
I have control.
You have control. We'll just follow our normal road here and head southbound towards Hatzick. So what do you think would happen if you tried to fly the helicopter with your eyes closed?
I think I would probably think that I'm in a direction that I'm not. And I think I would focus trying to hold my hands perfectly still to maintain where I left when they were open. And I think naturally I would just start to drift away.
So yeah, so basically what we were talking about before is you have to be hands and feet on the controls in a helicopter pretty much all the time,
right.
Which is not necessarily true in most airplanes.
Right.
You can let go and it will pretty much stabilize itself and continue flight in that direction as long as it's in trim.
Right.
Not the same thing in a helicopter. So obviously you would never purposely close your eyes, but it is an interesting experiment to show you how quickly things can go wrong. So how long do you think you could keep it in control before I'd have to take over?
I think like 15, 20 seconds.
15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I think you can go a little bit longer than that.
We'll go for.
Okay, so I'm going to start a timer, and on the count of 3, I'm going to have you close your eyes and try to fly straight and level for as long as you can, okay? You ready?
Yep.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Close your eyes. And describe to me what you're feeling right now.
Trying to make a small input as possible. I'm trying to feel what the wind is doing to the helicopter from the outside so I can adjust.
So do you feel like, which way do you feel like you're turning?
I feel like I'm turning, I feel like I'm being pushed to the right, but turning to the left.
Okay. And what do you feel like now?
Now I feel like I'm turning to the left again.
Okay.
So now I have completely no reference if I'm straight or if I'm still in a turn.
It's been 40 seconds now.
I definitely don't think I'm straight anymore. A little freaky.
Yeah, so you're 50 seconds now.
I feel like I'm climbing.
Okay.
I'm definitely speeding up.
Yep. Minute 10.
Now I have no idea what I'm doing. It's feeling a little awkward. Obviously hasn't gone too out of hand, because
So, doing pretty good so far. We haven't run into any major snags yet. You've actually managed to keep it under control for the most part. Now you're at 1 minute and 33 now. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you to open your eyes.
Okay, opening my eyes.
Okay, now.
Ay, ay, ay.
All right. Let's turn to the right. So you had, that was 1 minute and 54 right now, and that's 2 minutes right now, and that's probably when we would have been in the trees.
Oh, man.
So you lasted about 2 minutes with your eyes closed, which would have been essentially the equivalent of flying into a cloud and not being able to see outside. Obviously, that changes things when you can see your instruments, but the eyes closed method kind of shows you how disorienting it can be if you didn't trust your instruments and didn't fly the helicopter based off your instruments.
The only one I could really feel was the speeds, the climbs and the descents.
That's probably the scariest part, is when you feel and hear that acceleration. That's when you know something's not right. Because you're like, okay, it's definitely feeling a little faster than I wanted to be. But when you watch the footage back, I think you're going to be very surprised. Because when you said you were left, a lot of times you were turning right.
Wow.
And when you said you were climbing, you were occasionally descending. So it's pretty wild to see what you thought versus what was actually happening.
And like, I try to keep my inputs so small from the beginning, but as soon as you make one, then you think you're correcting for the run you thought you made. But if it's wrong, then you're backwards on every correction. Right,
and it's a really weird situation because you really can't trust what your inner ear is telling you.
Right.
There's no way to.
There's no sense of balance.
There's no sense of balance. You have to trust the instruments, and if you are not looking at the instruments, or if you deem the instruments not correct, and you're just relying on what you feel, there's absolutely no way that you can. You can manage flying the helicopter safely through that.
I can imagine being in a cloud. Like you can see, at that point, I don't know if I'm going right or left. So.
Yeah. And at a certain point, you know, after you've dug in so far and you're just completely ignoring what your instruments are saying and you're only going based off what you feel, it's really tricky to come out of that.
That was quite the experience.
Yeah, good job. You did pretty well. You lasted basically 2 minutes. All right, Scott, you think you'll spend much time flying with your eyes closed from here on out?
Probably not. I don't think it's truly advised. Maybe even with an IFR rating, I probably still would keep them open to look at the instruments. Even with an autopilot, probably still keep them open.
Yeah.
But it was quite the experience, and it just goes to show what you think is small movements is actually a lot larger, and you think you're correcting for what you thought you did, and you didn't, and now you're backwards the whole time.
Yeah, so it's just back to what you were saying earlier about the differences between a helicopter and a plane, and that's probably one of the major differences is a helicopter is very unstable, and a plane, most planes, can be very stable, and that difference alone makes a huge difference in how you actually fly.
Yeah, every input is so much more dramatic on a helicopter.
Yeah, and you barely move the controls, but the helicopter... You'll see in the video, it definitely didn't fly straight, for sure. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Really appreciate it. Got a lot of positive comments on the last video that we made. Scott and I have a bunch more flying to do in the near future here. So if you have any more ideas, any topics that you'd like us to cover, you can always leave a comment down below. And otherwise, we will... see you guys in the next one. Switching. See ya.